Hello there, and welcome to day 69 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And I am back on my MCU retrospective watch through. It's been a while since I went and watched the first Iron Man film a few weeks back, and I am continuing with the 2008 The Incredible Hulk film. It's funny really, because I've had a funny relationship with the Hulk as a character as a kid. I definitely saw that animated series from the 90s, and I remember liking it-ish, thinking it was okay. I never saw the Lou Ferrigno series, except for, weirdly, the last 10 minutes of the death of the Incredible Hulk, so I actually know how he dies. And I remember having a guy I knew who intensely loved the Incredible Hulk, and that kind of put me off a bit. And then, of course, the Ang Lee Hulk, which is not good. It just objectively isn't good. And so by the time you got to this, I remember being a teenager thinking, and this is, as I mentioned in the Iron Man films, not really being that bothered by this film and thinking it looked lame and CG and just not feeling it. And I definitely saw it, and I definitely had quite a negative reaction to it, and thinking, having those same thoughts. But actually watching it back now, it's pretty good. It's actually pretty good. I remember not liking Edward Norton, thinking the way he played Bruce Banner was just this, I don't know, it felt like there was something, he was playing him weirdly. And although, yeah, he does have a very different personality to Mark Ruffalo's version, I like it. I like the fact that he sort of has this reserved, sort of constantly self-policing, but also quite analytical brain. I discredit Edward Norton by saying that he wasn't good, and I would have happily seen what he would have looked like against Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans. Of course, this is a funny one because it's not officially... It is and it isn't in the MCU insofar as this was a Universal, like Iron Man 1, but people don't really count it because of Edward Norton. But then, of course, it has William Hurt in it. And, of course, William Hurt goes on to then be in Captain America Civil War and on throughout. So counting it as part of my MCU rewatch felt like a necessity, but also you could hand wave it. And it does fit in nicely. It's funny because, of course, there are very small call references and like they mention S.H.I.E.L.D. and it fits in the world of the MCU. I was impressed with how neatly it fits, barring the fact that Edward Norton, of course, is mysteriously replaced by Mark Ruffalo. Even things like the CG are good. It doesn't look as bad as I remember. I remember thinking it looked like a video game, particularly the final fight, which was advertised in the trailer, looking video gamey, and thinking, I'm not interested. And again, it doesn't look as bad as I remember. It is still a heavily CG film from 2008, and probably doesn't hold a candle to Iron Man, which of course preceded it. But it looks fine for what it is. Louis Leterrier, who of course went on to direct Clash of the Titans, which is much more CG heavy, demonstrates an ability to direct action scenes which are very emphasised on a monster that isn't really there in reality. And I have to say, the directing looks good. The action sequences are shot in a really good way. That the use of camera in the space looks really good in the fight scenes. I remember the scene between Tim Roth and when he's still in the human form before he's turned into the Abomination, when he's fighting the Hulk. And I remember that sequence looking kind of rubbish because it's just a very small man fighting a Hulk. But actually, it doesn't look as bad as I... Again, this review is mostly me thinking, this is a lot better in a lot of ways than I remember. It just things look better. And like I said, the choreography of that fight looks pretty good. And again, I'm looking forward to Tim Roth coming back. I'm aware that the She-Hulk series is currently in development, and primarily they're going to focus on the Abomination and Tim Roth. And I like him. I actually really like his character. It does dwindle off towards the end when it becomes more the Abomination stuff. But again, I found him an engaging villain. And everyone really is well placed for it. I mean, William Hurt really hits the ground running. I do think him and Edward Norton don't quite have the right chemistry. So when they are together, there's a lot. The issue, I think, is not necessarily always with Edward Norton's performance. There are just a couple of relationships he has and interactions that feel weirdly directed, and I'll expand on that shortly. But the scene where him and William Hurt are talking is it's a bit odd, and I can't quite put my finger on what's going on there. And I really like Ty Barnell as Burrell, sorry, Ty Burrell as Dr. Samuel Stearns, who, spoilers, kind of. This is really a spoiler talk. I'm really jumping all over the place, and also from the comic books, Samuel Stearns will become the villain known as the Leader, and of course they tee that up. Unfortunately, again, this is one of those things which the MCU has sort of left hanging, where they tee up him getting the brain injury and then the gamma leaking into his head, but that has to date never gone anywhere. So, and it's a shame, because Ty Burrell is good. He's actually very charming, and I almost feel sad that he goes on to become a villain, because he does have good chemistry with Edward Norton, and he has this really buzzing personality that I would love to have seen in further films. So yeah, I think all the pieces are really nicely in place. I like the fact that the first 20 minutes you don't get Hulk till about 23 minutes in, but Edward Norton really carries the sequence set in Brazil. The fact that he's speaking Portuguese for that whole sequence and is again set against characters who aren't really major, but he carries it really nicely, and you do get that sense of tension and character, and it's great. It really is. So by the time you get to the Hulk in that first set piece, it feels earned, and it doesn't have that problem with the Ang Lee one, where there's very little Hulk and everything that isn't the Hulk is dreadfully boring. You actually are engaged with it. You could almost say that, particularly towards the end in the third act, the Hulk really, it's the least interesting part in that third act, which is where the problems come in. The final fight is not great. The CG monster versus CG monster is not that interesting. I think the MCU really started to understand that you can't just have two CG figures hitting each other and the stake being, which one is stronger than the other. I think they realised that in the first Iron Man film, although I think they found ways around that made it engaging. But this film really struggles because with the exception of the threat to Betty Ross and to Thunderbolt Ross, the fight itself is very dull with little stakes to it, and it does suffer from that everything is CG. It all feels like it's just liquid, and it just lacks something. It just is very dull. Whereas I think later, when they get into Avengers and Thor, they know how to use the Hulk in a way where you feel like characters around him are interacting in a way that you actually do feel the stakes and the threat. I think the other problem with the Hulk is the fact that because he's this big, indestructible monster, when it's just, what odds can we put against him, it gets very dull. Which is why I actually think the Tim Roth fight scene, that scene is actually more interesting to me because you have this man, this small human man, fighting the Hulk. The other major issue, and it's the one major problem, is Liv Tyler as Betty Ross, which Liv Tyler is a phenomenal actress, and there's no doubt on that. But I don't really know what she's doing in this. She does this strange, breathy, mumbly performance that it's very frustrating to watch, because they, in the text of the film, set her up as she's a doctor in her own right, a cellular biologist. You know, she's engaged in the events of the plot. But the way she's performed is just this wet, uninteresting, very weirdly performing love interest who and I think the character outside of the character of Betty Ross in comic terms can go that way, where she is one of the duller love interests of the superheroes, but there was enough there that she should have been an interesting character, and I think it's just the fact that she does this strange performance that's and her and Edward Norton, their chemistry is just very dull, and the two of them then start doing this mumbly, whispering thing between them that's really hard to sit through, because they do have some chemistry, but it's just lost. And I don't know if it's, I don't know if Louis Leterrier struggled to direct Liv Tyler, or whether he didn't know how to, he doesn't know how to do that character, or whether it's Liv Tyler didn't know how to perform that character. But it was a hard sit through, because she looks right in the role. It's just the performance feels like something is missing or lacking or restricted, and that's the biggest flaw in the film, because we spend a large proportion of the film with her, and with Edward Norton, and it's just really it's not a good sit. So as I say, the two biggest problems being the big final set piece and the love interest. Admittedly, it does take the wind from it a bit, but as I say, the build-up's really nice, and I think the first two acts are phenomenal, and I think all the pieces are there. And this isn't the worst MCU film that I thought it was going to be. I have yet to see whether it will still rank as lowest, because I know what's coming, and my eyes look over Thor 2 and Iron Man 3, and I think, will they actually be harder sits than this? I don't know. Because this wasn't bad, and that's the main thing. It was actually quite fun, and maybe as we rattle on, I'll discover none of the MCU films are difficult sits, and I'd actually find it hard to rank them, but who's to say? All I can say is that I'm surprised by this, and I'm rather impressed that it is as good as it is, and that it fits nicely in the MCU in the way that it does. And I would like to see a future Hulk film. I hear rumours that it's tied up in licensing with Universal and the MCU. And some people say, oh no, they just don't want to do a Hulk film because they just find it so difficult to do that character. I don't agree with that. I think you could do a compelling Hulk film, and I think it was a shame they crammed the Planet Hulk storyline into Ragnarok, even though that is a great part of that film. But yeah, and I would like to see a standalone Mark Ruffalo Hulk film. Like I say, the She-Hulk film's coming soon. TV series, sorry, is very shortly on its way. So that'll have to do for now. But yeah, very pleased, very impressed. I look forward to my next MCU film. So you can, if you could, please do like this video if you've enjoyed it. Go back through my back catalogue of films. They're not normally as fun and bouncy as this, because of course I try to delve more into film as a genre, as an art form. but some do. Some are quite bouncy. So please, and if you do like my videos, please do subscribe to the channel, and do share on social media platforms, and like me, or follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I post daily with the new videos. So I will see you again tomorrow. Take care.